Chris Norman was born into music long before he ever stepped on a stage. Growing up in Redcar, North Yorkshire, with a father who earned his living as a singer and entertainer, music was not an ambition but an atmosphere. It filled the house, shaped conversations, and quietly formed the rhythm of everyday life. When the family later moved to Bradford, Norman found himself surrounded by the sounds of a changing Britain, where skiffle, early rock and roll, and raw pop energy were giving young people a new language of expression. As a teenager, he picked up the guitar and began performing with school friends, discovering not only how to play, but how to communicate emotion through sound. Even then, his voice stood out, rough around the edges, deeply expressive, and unmistakably sincere. It lacked polish, but gained power from that very imperfection, hinting early on at a singer who would connect through feeling rather than theatrical display. Smokey and the soundtrack of the 70s. By the mid-1960s, Norman had joined forces with Alan Silson, Terry Utley, and Ron Kelly, later replaced by Pete Spencer, forming a band that would eventually become Smokey. Years of struggling through changing names, long drives, and modest venues finally gave way to a breakthrough when they began working with producers and songwriters Mike Chapman and Nicky Chinn. The result was a run of songs that would define an era. Tracks like Living Next Door to Alice, If You Think You Know How to Love Me, and Lay Back in the Arms of Someone became global hits, driven by Norman's emotionally direct vocal style. Smokey's music resonated particularly strongly in continental Europe and Australia, where audiences connected with its honesty and melodic warmth. Norman emerged as a frontman who never appeared distant or untouchable, but approachable and real. His voice carried vulnerability and strength in equal measure, turning simple lyrics into shared experiences for millions. Choosing freedom over comfort. By the early 1980s, the success that had once felt exhilarating began to feel restrictive. Endless touring, repeating formulas, and the weight of expectation slowly drained the creative spark that had fueled Smokey's rise. For Chris Norman, the desire to grow artistically became impossible to ignore. In 1986, he made the difficult decision to leave the band and step into the uncertainty of a solo career. It was a risk few artists survive, especially when departing from a group with such global recognition. Yet Norman's instincts proved right. Free from the constraints of a band identity, he explored a softer, more personal musical space that emphasized emotional storytelling. His solo work leaned into pop, soft rock, and subtle country influences, allowing his voice to breathe and mature. Rather than chasing trends, he focused on connection. That decision didn't distance him from his audience. It deepened the bond and redefined his career on his own terms. Stumblin' In, and a defining collaboration. One of the defining moments of Norman's solo journey came through collaboration rather than isolation. His 1986 duet with Suzi Quatro, Stumblin' In, became an international success and introduced a gentler, more intimate side of his artistry. The song worked because it felt genuine, not manufactured. Two distinct voices meeting on equal ground. Norman's husky warmth blended naturally with Quatro's strength, creating a dialogue rather than a performance. The track topped charts in several countries and became a lasting favorite across generations. More importantly, it demonstrated Norman's ability to share space musically without losing his identity. The success of the song opened doors to a solo career that thrived particularly in Germany, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe. Songs like Midnight Lady and Some Hearts Are Diamonds followed, solidifying his reputation as an artist whose appeal was rooted in sincerity, emotional clarity, and timeless melody rather than fleeting pop fashion. A career built on consistency, not nostalgia. Unlike many artists from his era, Chris Norman never relied solely on past success. While he continued to honor his smoky legacy, he consistently released new music and toured extensively, particularly across Europe. His live performances became known for their emotional honesty rather than spectacle. Audiences came not just to relive old hits, but to feel something real. His voice, weathered by time, gained depth rather than losing power, carrying a sense of lived experience that younger performers often lack. Industry recognition followed, including CMT Europe's International Video Star of the Year award in 1994, affirming his relevance in a rapidly changing music landscape. Television appearances, festival headlining slots, and respected collaborations reinforced the idea that Norman's appeal crossed borders and generations. His longevity wasn't accidental. It was built on discipline, authenticity, and a refusal to treat music as anything other than a craft deserving respect. A life anchored by family and privacy. Away from the stage, Chris Norman's life followed a very different rhythm. He married his wife Linda in 1970, long before international fame entered the picture. Their relationship was built on shared youth and mutual grounding, not celebrity or public attention. Together, they raised 5 children, and despite the demands of touring, Norman consistently emphasized family as his emotional anchor. In 1986, the family relocated to the Isle of Man, a deliberate choice that reflected his desire for privacy and balance. The island offered distance from the noise of the entertainment industry and allowed his children to grow up outside the glare of constant attention. For Norman, success never meant sacrificing personal stability. Friends and collaborators often describe him as approachable and grounded, traits that stem directly from the life he built off stage. His commitment to family has remained one of the quiet constants throughout a long and demanding career. Speaking honestly about Suzi Quatro at 75, Chris Norman finds himself in a place where reflection comes naturally and caution feels unnecessary. Recently, he has spoken openly about Suzi Quatro and the impact she had on the music world they shared. Looking back on the early 1970s, he describes a scene that was competitive, chaotic, and alive with possibility. In that environment, Quatro stood out not as a novelty, but as a disruptor. She didn't conform, and she didn't ask permission. As a woman fronting a rock band and playing bass, she challenged unspoken rules and forced the industry to rethink its assumptions. Norman acknowledges that many male musicians underestimated how much pressure she faced. He speaks with admiration about her resilience, honesty, and refusal to be reshaped by expectations. For him, speaking now is about fairness, not revisionism. Age, he says, strips away ego and leaves respect. Respect replacing rivalry. Norman reflects that time has softened tensions that once felt significant. In their youth, artists competed for space, recognition, and survival in an unforgiving industry. That environment often created distance and misunderstandings. Looking back, Norman sees those years differently. He speaks of gratitude rather than rivalry, recognizing how figures like Quatro elevated the entire scene by refusing to compromise. He emphasizes that her legacy should not be framed through gender but through contribution. She wasn't the female rock star, she was simply a rock artist who happened to be female. That distinction matters to him now. When younger musicians ask about the past, Norman says he points them toward Quatro as an example of courage and self-belief. His words carry the authority of experience, not nostalgia. They come from someone who has watched history unfold from the inside and understands how rare true authenticity really is. A legacy. Defined by integrity. Chris Norman's career cannot be measured solely by chart positions or awards. Its true value lies in continuity, the ability to remain emotionally honest across decades of change. From Smokey's global anthems to his reflective solo work, from sold-out festivals to quiet family life on the Isle of Man, his journey reflects a consistent set of values: sincerity, commitment, and respect for the craft. Speaking openly about Suzi Quatro at 75 is not a publicity move, but a natural extension of that integrity. It is the voice of someone no longer concerned with image, only with truth. Norman's story reminds us that musical legacies are not built overnight, nor are they sustained by fame alone. They endure because of character, and in that sense, his words about Quatro feel less like commentary and more like a closing chapter written with clarity, gratitude, and the calm confidence of someone who knows exactly who he is.